My name is Vania Grigorova and I'm from Kate Podkrepa. We heard very interesting presentations here. I do have a question to the minister by the Kharkov's university representative. He talked, who really cares about what people really think and what the people of Crimea really think? There was a referendum carried out there, but nobody really cared about the opinion of the people. It became clear that in Moldova there should have been explained what the European Union really is. Do people in Moldova really know what the European Union really is and who they represent? And I do have another brief question to the journalist in Turkey. It wasn't really clear to me what was the example of the hybrid war when you were talking about the aircraft which was put down in the space. Don't you think that when we talk about hybrid war, there are hybrid actions, violence on both sides? This panel began about the propaganda, but propaganda campaigns are not something good. Does Turkey use any such propaganda campaigns when we talk about its actions towards the Kurds and actions towards the Syrian people on behalf of Turkey? Well, now there were two questions there brought up. Is that so?
Sorry?
Would you like to answer the one that
Now you asked about, I would like to really make this distinction in Turkey. Word goes about the terrorism on behalf of the Turkish labor power, which uses force, violence, because there were two terrorist acts with victims. So when in this occasion Turkey really faces this real threat and danger, but I would like to make a distinction between Kurds and the terrorism on behalf of PKK.
Yes, so thank you very much for the question. Actually, it's a very relevant one because during the visa liberalization, but also during the association, the negotiation of the association agreement, we had the impression more that our authorities are talking to Brussels and communicating to them more than to their own citizens. So I think that this was one of the things that our government lacked at that moment, and this is where the Russian propaganda has picked up and tried to influence and to destabilize the situation in Moldova. I would say that our authorities realized a bit late that they need to communicate to their citizens and to the population, and then they started campaign of popularizing the European Union and the European Union support to Moldova. As you know, we are one of the biggest recipients of financial support in the European Union. So, but here we have two dimensions, because of course this is our national priority, and we have to be the ones who are explaining our population the benefit of joining the European Union and to deepen the relations with the EU. But at the same time, I think that there should be a bigger visibility policy from the part of the EU inside the country, which is also lacking, unfortunately. Now I know that the European Union is putting more efforts in order to be more visible due to the fact that their popularity really decreased during the last years. But I think that with joint efforts we can put it back on track, and we can counterfight the massive propaganda which is coming from the abroad. Thank you.
Давид говори, какво си мислите?
Let me say what the Crimean people and population really thinks, or the Tatars or the Bulgarian, and the last referendum, the so-called referendum, so-called because it was a very small percentage of the population who really went to vote. I cannot comment on the way the referendum was carried out, but it was something like the way 90% of the, he makes an allusion to Germany. That is what happened in Ukraine, Soviet Union troops. Well, the scenario is pretty much the same. Well, the core of the question is different. In reality, there is a historical roots and a reason why Crimea should be an independent country, but Kiev's problem was that they did not pay any attention not only to Crimean people, but only to the region, the people in the within the region, to have more independence. I was there when we fought for the rights to be entitled to have independence. So there are different factors indeed. Now we cannot really cancel the Tatarian conflict. There was a time when the Tatars were pushed away, Bulgarians, Armenians, 12,000 Bulgarians within only 2 hours on the 27th of June were pushed away. And when I was there in Sevastopol, and I was teaching there in one village, and there was an illegitimate organization called, and all the village was actually pushed away from the territory, and instead of them there came some new people to populate the place, and the status of the Crimean people who were ethnically originally there was changed. Now I can also mention other examples. Mayor Rushkov, he was financially supported by Moscow to support the people to stay and live there in Crimea, and Bulgarians were pushed away. So there is nothing really surprising if the whole population of Crimean is really going to be changed in the near future.
This is what happens if one puts 6 excellent speakers with such a broad variety of interesting case studies on one panel, for which we have 1 hour. We remain with more questions than answers, which is actually what always happens in excellent seminars, that you don't have more answers than questions. But I think it was worth trying to represent almost the entire Black Sea region from the different perspectives of different stakeholders. And I think we all got a number of interesting insights and food for thought for further discussion. So it remains for me to thank not only the organizers and congratulate them to their 25th anniversary. It has always been a pleasure for us, the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, to have a partner with a similar commitment to promote a better understanding, and not only to talk about others, but with others, which is also a recommendation for future events like this, that it would probably make more sense to invite even more actors and not only those who represent NATO, because then it would be interesting to hear what others have to say who are either accused or misinterpreted in their understanding, because as I said in my introductory remarks, it's a lot about storytelling and what language does to create reality. But I think this is not the last opportunity. There will be more coming both in Bulgaria and what we do as the ICD around the world and not only in Berlin. So thank you very much to all the speakers. Thank you very much for the organization for setting this up. Thank you for the understanding that we didn't have the chance to have such a lively debate as we had before the lunch break. And I want to finish with a warning. I sometimes got the impression that if we talk about others' strategy and propaganda, there is a desire to do something similar, like kids in a sandbox. He has a bigger toy or a new one, and I want the same. We should not forget what NATO is meant for and what it is trying to defend. If we complain that Russia can set up something in one day and we could not, then it has a lot to do with the fact that this is an open society, and in open society a pluralist discourse simply takes more time than if you have straightforward autocratic way of decision making, which is probably more effective. But I don't want to be in a situation where we either have the propaganda tools in a similar way used on this side of the European continent, but rather feel that we don't have an equal footage when it comes to hybrid warfare and propaganda tools. On this not so happy note, thank you very much for your attention, and I think we will have a short coffee break now, or do we just continue? We don't even have a coffee break. Thank you very much for your attention, and I thank you for a round of applause. Thank you very much.